believing that an informed electorate is an essential element of a free society. The Pasadena Channel and tonight's sponsors are proud to bring to you an opportunity to meet judges and judicial candidates in 3 types of courts. These are the family district courts, the county criminal courts at law, and the criminal district courts. The judges and candidates will be given an opportunity to introduce themselves and then will be invited to respond to questions that are both topical and illustrative of their ability to hold the office they seek. We hope that you will find tonight's activities informative and helpful in the exercise of your precious right to vote. It is now my pleasure to introduce to you Pasadena Fire Marshal David Brannon, who will chair tonight's proceedings. Marshal?
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm David Brannon, Fire Marshal for the City of Pasadena. I'd like to welcome you to tonight's screening for the judicial candidates for the criminal district courts. At this time, I'd like to ask Reverend Jim Hastings to deliver the benediction for us tonight.
Let's pray. Father, we thank you for this time together just to come and listen to these candidates, and we just pray for them to have a clear thought in their mind as they give it out, that they will be able to present to the people their heart and their desire for the positions of the jobs that they are seeking. And Lord, we just ask that the people who will be hearing them will hear what they need to listen to in order to make a good decision. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. At this time, I would like to introduce the panel for tonight. I have Miss Eubanks, Principal for Pasadena Memorial High School. I have Officer Matt Riggs, Patrol Officer and Vice President for the Pasadena Police Officers Association. Chief Mike Jackson, Assistant Police Chief for the City of Pasadena. Chief Lanny Armstrong, Fire Chief for the City of Pasadena. Chief Stuart Russell, Police Chief for PISD Police. Officer David Garza, President, Pasadena Latino Police Officers Association. Sergeant James Anderson, President, Pasadena Police Officers Association. Richard Scott, Community Relations Director, City of Pasadena. And Deputy Raymond Colvin, Deputy Fire Marshal, City of Pasadena. Thank you all each for attending tonight and participating in this event. At this time, I'd like to call up our first candidate for the 180th Criminal District Court, Judge Catherine Evans.
Good evening.
Please state your name and why you feel you're a good candidate for this court.
My name is Catherine Evans, and I'm the presiding judge in the 180th Criminal District Court. I was appointed to that position in 2013 by Governor Perry. Prior to that, I had been at the Harris County District Attorney's Office for more than 12 years. In my time there, I had achieved the rank of felony chief, and that means I had tried a lot of cases over those years, including felonies at every level. It also means I had a lot of exposure to all the different areas of criminal law, including child abuse, including white-collar crime, including vehicular fatalities, including prosecuting public officials who are betraying the public trust. The bottom line is that with all that experience, it means that I have the qualifications and I have all of the time and experience that I need to perform the job that I'm performing now. The Houston Police Officers Union, as well as the Harris County Deputies Organization, have endorsed me, and I'm asking for your support to keep me on the bench in the 180th District Court.
Thank you. Domestic violence is currently very much in the news. If elected, how would you handle such cases in your court, and what tools do you have available to protect the injured party?
There are 2 main times that the judge has a direct impact on domestic violence and public safety. One is during the pendency of the case, while the case is actually pending before there's been any type of finding of guilt. That can also be a very deadly and dangerous time, frankly, for the victims involved. So one of the important things that a judge has to do is set the appropriate bond in that case. Sometimes it may be appropriate to have monitoring on somebody who has made bond, so whether that's an electronic monitor. Always the tools that are available to us are no contact orders to prevent contact with the victim and their family members, It's also a magistrate's order of emergency protection goes into effect, preventing any further harassment or assault that can give rise to an entirely new felony case. Once somebody has actually been found guilty or is on probation for domestic violence, it's important to have individual assessment and to make sure that person is getting the counseling that they need so that they are no longer a threat.
Thank you. Please state a procedure or policy that you have or plan to introduce in your court, if elected, that you feel will result in greater effectiveness and/or efficiency in your court.
I will say that one of the things that I'm most proud of in the 180th is our intensive probation program, our Change Through Intervention CTI docket. It's an amazing opportunity that I have to participate and support folks who are truly making some of the difficult decisions and efforts to change the course of their lives and their families' lives. It's an opportunity that I have to work directly with the probation officers who are supervising the probationers, as well as to work directly with the probationers, making sure that they are receiving the acknowledgement that they deserve for making those changes, for getting the education, for getting jobs, for going through rehabilitation and doing the hard work of battling, in many cases, mental health issues as well as addiction issues. And so that's something that I would look to continue and even expand in the 180th.
Please give your opinion of pros and cons as you see them of the present public defendant program versus the appointment of private attorneys to represent the indigent.
I appoint daily with confidence attorneys from both of those groups, both from the Public Defender's Office as well as private attorneys. Certainly the Public Defender's Office is still a young office and it is a new office. They have done a fantastic job. They are not handling capital cases at this time, but I expect that that will change in the future because they have done such a good job. With the private attorneys, you have an amazing group of attorneys with just decades and decades of experience behind them. And so any attorney that I appoint in the 180th, I have confidence in. In order to qualify to be an appointed attorney, they have to have had a certain number of years that they had served in criminal courts, a certain number of trials. They had to have taken a test as well as passed that and been approved by the judges. More so than that, any attorney that I appoint, I personally have confidence in and know in their experience and their knowledge and their willingness to listen and be responsive to clients.
Thank you for coming out this evening.
Thank you.
Our next candidate, Randy Rolls, 180th.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I am Randy Roll. I'm the former district judge of the 179th Criminal District Court. Originally, I'm from Port Arthur, and I went to college in Beaumont at Lamar. I studied languages. I speak Russian, German, French, and Spanish, and we use that daily in the courts, believe it or not, because 38% of this county is Hispanic. I went to law school at South Texas College of Law and graduated in '87. And for the last 25 years, I've been practicing exclusively criminal law. I've had more than 10,000 felony cases, and I've had more than 100 jury trials.
Domestic violence is currently very much in the news. If elected, how would you handle such cases in your court, and what tool do you have available to protect the injured party?
Thank you. The tool we use in the criminal district courts is not a restraining order. We call it a motion for emergency protection. We call it MOEP, Motion for Emergency Protection. And when there is an allegation of domestic violence, then usually the district attorney gives us the paperwork. The judge has a lot of power to add things to that motion for emergency protection. That is, to make them stay away from each other, no contact if that's necessary. Quite often when they have children, they have to have some type of contact. But to have no contact is one of the things. The judge could go up on the bond. The judge could have regular drug tests or weekly times that they have to report to the pretrial services.
Please state a procedure or policy that you have or plan to introduce in your court, if elected, that you feel has or will result in greater effectiveness and or efficiency in your court.
Senator Ellis, who is the godfather of our public defender system, has made a proposal that would take some of the power away from the district judges. That is to name attorneys to indigent cases. And that would severely limit what the judges can do. Judges sometimes can appoint lawyers that will move the case so that they can get it through the court faster. And it has the appearance of not being proper. So I would support what Senator Ellis is proposing at this time, to take that power away from the district judges and give it to the public defender's office to name these ad litem people for indigent defense.
Please give your opinion of the pros and cons, as you see them, of the present public defendant program versus appointment of private attorneys to represent the indigent.
This county of over 4 million people, has an abundance of attorneys. We have more than 10,000 attorneys here, but there are about 400 or 500 on a list. They have to be graded. They were given levels of first degree, second degree, third degree, and we use a wheel system now, which is computerized, and we say we need a person for a first degree felony. So you put that request into the computer and it spits out 5 names. Presently, that's what we're using. And we're using people with many, many years of experience, people that have come from the district attorney's office and people who didn't, but these are very experienced people.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to thank you for coming out tonight.
Thank you.
Our next candidate is Judge Susan Brown, 185th Criminal District Court. Please state your name and why you feel you're a good candidate for this court.
Good evening. My name is Susan Brown, and I'm the judge of the 185th Criminal District Court. I've been the judge of the 185th for 16 years. In my 16 years on the bench, I've tried hundreds of jury trials. I've also presided over thousands of cases. I'm also the administrative judge for the criminal division, which means I am the liaison between the other judges and other courts, and also the community. I'm also an adjunct professor at the University of Houston, where I teach trial advocacy. It is all this experience that I bring to the bench. It is also the commitment to criminal law, as I've been practicing criminal law for over 30 years here in Harris County, where I was raised. I went to college at Texas A&M and South Texas College of Law. It's all those things that make it so important that a judge have the experience and the qualifications to hear the types of very serious cases that we hear every day in the 185th Criminal District Court.
Domestic violence is currently very much in the news. If elected, how would you handle such cases in your court, and what tools do you have available to protect the injured party?
Domestic violence cases are filed every single day in the criminal courts of Harris County. I'm fortunate, as I've had the privilege to serve on the board of the Bridge Battered Women's Shelter here in Pasadena. And through that, I've had a lot of training, a lot of ability to learn about the cycle of abuse and domestic violence. In doing that and in presiding over these cases, it is my responsibility to always have a magistrate's order of emergency protection for the victim. I also order a no contact while the case is pending, and oftentimes that continues if a defendant is placed on probation. It's very important that victims have an opportunity to come to the court, to talk to the court, and to be able to talk about the concerns that they have when, if a defendant is placed on probation, we craft the conditions of probation. It's all those things that are very important in making a decision as to what happens in a domestic violence case.
Please state a procedure or policy that you have or plan to introduce into your court, if elected, that you feel has or will result in greater effectiveness and or efficiency in your court.
Currently, I'm a court that uses the differentiated case management system. This is a system that places all of the cases into a certain setting depending upon the severity of the case. Because of this allows for meaningful settings for both the attorneys, the prosecutors, and the defense lawyers. It also gives the victims and the defendant the opportunity to know from the beginning of the case till the end how long it will be before that case is disposed of. By using the differentiated case management system, it allows for the lawyers to work outside of the courtroom, for the lawyers to come to court prepared with enough time to work on their cases. It's using that system that prevents settings where nothing happens. It prevents folks from coming to court when they don't have to. And this system is used to move cases through the system in a very efficient manner.
Please give your opinion of pros and cons as you see them of the present public defendant program versus appointment of private attorneys to represent the indigent.
We are so fortunate in Harris County to not only have a wonderful public defender's office, but also to have many, many experienced and qualified lawyers to handle cases. It's unfortunate that the public defender's office does not handle every type of case. But the ability of these private lawyers to come in and handle these cases makes a great difference in how justice is handed out here in Harris County. The public defender's office is a great situation because they have a lot of investigative tools, and they're able to do that. They also help the private bar. So when lawyers are appointed from the private bar, they're able to help those lawyers with the tools that they have. But as I said, we are very, very fortunate. There's really not a downside to either one of those, whether it be the private bar or the public defender's office, because we have such qualified lawyers here in Harris County.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next candidate tonight is candidate Mac McGinnis, the 185th Criminal District Court. Please
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Please state your name and why you feel you're a good candidate for this court.
My name is Mac McGinnis. I've spent 32 years as a criminal defense lawyer. I'm board certified in criminal law. I was named by Texas Monthly Magazine in 2003 and 2004 as a super lawyer. Won over 180 criminal district cases, not guilties. And then I've served 8.5 years as a civil prosecutor, prosecuting Department of Family and Protective Services cases, CPS cases for the county attorney's office. I taught criminal procedure evidence and criminal trial advocacy at South Texas College of Law for 8 years. I was endorsed by the Pasadena Bar Association, by the AFL-CIO, and every single lawyers group that I've been before so far, except for one, and we're still waiting to find out who they've endorsed because they don't announce for another month. And I feel that I'm qualified for this court, and I think there's some changes that need to be made in Harris County, and I would like to help do that.
Domestic violence is currently very much in the news. If elected, how would you handle such cases in your court, and what tools do you have available to protect the injured party?
Well, firstly, I hope that we could change things a little bit in the county courts because, as you know, and I see a lot of law enforcement officers here, fire department officers, and people that I know, so I know that you all have experience with domestic violence, particularly the police officers and the EMT people here. And as you know, domestic violence should be handled first in the misdemeanor courts. It doesn't come to the felony courts until it's a second or third offense or if it's an aggravated assault. And hopefully we can have more funding, more spending, and we can take care of it in the misdemeanor courts. But by the time it comes to us, there are many public organizations that help. Unfortunately, they don't have enough money. Having worked with the Department of Family and Protective Services, almost every case I've prosecuted involves some form of domestic violence, usually associated with drug cases or alcohol cases. There needs to be some serious changes, and we still haven't faced, after 30 years of talking about it, our problems with alcohol and drugs.
Please state a procedure or policy that you have or plan to introduce in your court, if elected, that you feel has or will result in greater effectiveness and or efficiency in your court.
Well, it's a little bit more inefficient, but I think it's one that's needed. We need to have in Harris County, we need to do what every other county except for 2 in Texas do, and that is to select our grand jurors by a random method so that we don't have conflicts of interest in our grand jury system. I intend to install that in my court. And I hope that I can convince the Judges Board. As you know, the Harris County Court System is governed by a Judges Board, a Criminal District Judges Board. And I hope to inaugurate a system whereby we have random selection of grand jurors as we do in almost every other county in the state of Texas. Now then, secondly, I would like to see us reinvigorate the old pretrial release program that we used to have in the 80s. What that did was that permitted the release of first-time small crime offenders so that we didn't serve as a support for the bail bond system, which is what the pretrial release agency has become. I think we need room in our jails for bad criminals. I see the stop sign, so I'm stopping.
Please give your opinion of pros and cons as you see them of the present public defender program versus the appointment of private attorneys to represent the indigent.
I'm very pleased that in Harris County, we finally, I think we're one of the last large counties in Texas to develop a public defender service. The public defenders have available to them investigators. I've tried many, many federal cases, and I've always received help from the federal public defenders. Of course, they're obligated under the Criminal Justice Act of the 1970s to provide help to private defense attorneys. That is not the law in Texas. It should be the law in Texas. We do receive help from the public defenders here. I will use both. Of course, if you have a case where somebody is represented by a public defender, you can't then have the public defender represent the co-defendant because there would be an inbred conflict of interest. In that case, you have to have private counsel. I would appoint very qualified private counsel.
Thank you for coming out tonight.
Thank you so much.
Our next candidate, Judge Brad Hart, 230th Criminal District Court. Please state your name and why you feel you're a good candidate for this court.
Well, first, let me thank the panel for being here and for the viewers for taking the time to learn about all of us judicial candidates. My name is Brad Hart. I am the judge of the 230th Criminal District Court. I've been the judge of the 230th since January of 2013 when I was appointed by the governor to fulfill the remainder of that term. Of course, I'm seeking a full 4-year term now. Prior to that, I grew up in the small East Texas town of Athens, Texas, and went to Baylor University where I got a degree in psychology. Then moved to Houston, went to South Texas College of Law where I got my degree, and in 1997, after graduating, was hired at the Harris County District Attorney's Office where I served as a prosecutor until I was appointed by the governor in January of 2013. While I was at the DA's office, I served in various levels, various places, the last 4 years being in the Major Offenders Division of the DA's office, handling the worst of Harris County.
Domestic violence is currently very much in the news. If elected, how would you handle such cases in your court, and what tools do you have available to protect the injured party?
Well, it is very much in the news right now, but as we all know, it's been a problem for a long time. One of the first assignments I had in the DA's office was in the Family Criminal Law Division, which handles family violence cases that happen. So it's been around for a long time. One of the tools that we've talked about is the Magistrate's Order for Emergency Protection. Whenever a domestic violence case comes into the court, it's one of the most automatic things that we do that provides the victim with some sort of protection. Like other courts, we also almost always issue a no-contact order as a condition of bond. And one of the newer things that we're able to do is if a person is on bond, set them up with a GPS monitor that not only tracks where they are, but also puts in exclusion zones where you can set up a zone where they are not allowed to go to, and we're notified if they do violate that zone so we can take action as needed.
Please state a procedure or policy that you have or plan to introduce in your court, if elected, that you feel has or will result in greater effectiveness and/or efficiency in your court.
One of the first things that we did when I was appointed to the 230th was become one of the first courts, criminal courts, to use the e-file and e-subpoena system, which once the lawyers learn how to use it, they tell me is much more efficient, much more effective. I'm also one of the 5 pilot courts for the differentiated case management system that makes each court setting at a set time so everyone knows what's expected and when they're going to be expected to accomplish certain tasks. The idea being that we can reduce the number of settings, which the average amongst the courts is about 6 settings before disposition, but in the differentiated case management courts, my court being about an average of 4.7 settings before a case gets to a disposition, which creates more of an efficient way to get cases through the system and allows us to get cases heard in a more reasonable time.
Please give your opinion of the pros and cons as you see them of the present public defender program versus the appointment of private attorneys to represent the indigent.
When the public defenders program was first being talked about, I wasn't necessarily in support of it because I believe that the quality of lawyer, individual private attorneys that we have here in Harris County who got a bad rap of things that happened back in the 1980s had significantly gone up, and it was a level of bar that the people of Harris County could be proud of. But since the implementation of the Public Defender's Office, I see the true benefits of it, that they have certain resources that individual private attorneys may not have, in addition to the fact that not only do they work on their cases, the cases that are assigned to them, but they provide to those private attorneys who are appointed on cases help such as appellate help, help with immigration issues, help with issues that certain lawyers just, when they need guidance on, they're there for them as well. So it makes for a good, sound system.
Thank you. Our next candidate is candidate Greg Glass, the 230th Criminal District Court. Please state your name and why you feel you're a good candidate for this court.
Thank you, Fire Marshal. My name is Greg Glass. I'm the Democratic nominee for the 230th Criminal District Court of Harris County, Texas. That's a court of felony jurisdiction, having county-wide jurisdiction, as do all the felony courts. Tomorrow, I will have been licensed 41 years in this state. Over that time, I've been a trial lawyer, mostly a criminal trial lawyer. Having been licensed first in 1973, I've been practicing continuously in Harris and contiguous counties. I've been board certified in criminal law since 1983. I have literally handled thousands upon thousands of cases. I have tried somewhere between 100 and 200 felony cases, both in state and federal court. I am a trial lawyer. I am ready to be a trial judge. It has given me experience, and I think I have the right temperament to be a judge. After you've learned what I've learned over this period of time, you can do the job.
Domestic violence is currently very much in the news. If elected, how would you handle such cases in your court, and what tools do you have available to protect the injured party?
Well, you've heard much of this before, but the tools that are there are the emergency magistrate's order for emergency protection, which is entered realistically in most cases, in felony cases. Obviously, if a case makes it to the felony court, as has been said previously, it's either a very serious case or there have been prior cases in misdemeanor court. That order is important. Also, reviewing bonds to make sure they're appropriate, that they're high enough to assure that that person will appear in court and will be subjecting themselves to the governance of the court. They can also be supervised. We have no contact orders, of course, which would be enforced in almost every case until the case is over. And there's a continuum of sanctions that are available to all judges for persons on bond.
Please state a procedure or policy that you have or plan to introduce in your court, if elected, that you feel has or will result in greater effectiveness and or efficiency in your court.
I haven't heard it mentioned before, but I think, we haven't had a felony court created here in some 28 years. In that period of time, our population has at least doubled. So we got the same number of felony courts handling the caseload that is over twice as big as it used to be. In Fort Bend County, they have initiated a system of associate judges who handle relatively insubstantial things like arraignments and pleas. That takes the pressure off of judges who are the presiding judges so that they can try cases and dispose of cases on their dockets and not be burdened by things that can be done by associate judges. I think that's very important. I would also consider the institution of afternoon dockets, were that to become necessary because of the caseload upon the courts here. And I think it's important to grant to consider granting bonds to nonviolent minor drug offenders so that we don't have to support them in jail and they get out and hire their own attorneys.
Please give your opinion of the pros and cons as you see them of the present public defendant program versus appointment of private attorneys to represent the indigent.
I personally think that the hybrid system we have here, which is the public defender's office on one hand and private attorneys on the other, is working quite well. This isn't the old days when an attorney went to see the judge and the judge thought he ought to, handle a case and the judge gave him the case. There are tests that are taken nowadays. These tests determine who's responsible, who can handle third, second, first-degree felonies, capital murder cases. The resources available to the PD's office are substantial, but not all cases need this. So many cases can be handled by the highly responsible private bar attorneys appointed by the judges, and as I said before, the public defender's office is charged with helping those attorneys too. The public defender's office has a great deal of resources available to them. Private attorneys have to get the court to pay out of county funds for those resources. So it's a good system that blends well together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next candidate, Judge Catherine Cabanis, the 248th Criminal District Court.
Good evening. I am Catherine Cabanis. I am the judge in the 248th Criminal District Court. I bring 2 decades of experience to the criminal justice system. I was a prosecutor for 11 years, where I prosecuted cases ranging from property crimes all the way to capital murders. I then went to Crime Stoppers, where I was the executive director of Crime Stoppers, working in our community to make sure that our communities were safe places to live, work, and raise our children. I was appointed 2 years ago by Governor Perry to be the judge in the 248th Criminal District Court to finish out a term of a judge who retired. I was, in 2008, the FBI's Public Awareness Leadership Award winner, and in 2009, I received the Victims' Rights Caucus Award in Washington, D.C. I was also one of the 50 most influential women in Houston in 2011. It has been my priority for my career to make sure that Harris County is a safe place to live, work, and learn, and I'll continue to do that in the 248th Criminal District Court.
Domestic violence is currently very much in the news. If elected, how would you handle such cases in your court, and what tools do you have available to protect the injured party?
I do bring experience to this issue as well. It is tragic that these cases have been so in the news lately. When I was a prosecutor, I worked in the Family Criminal Law Division, where I tried these cases, often without a victim who was cooperative. I won most of them. I then, when I went to Crime Stoppers, took that experience, recognized that November is Domestic Violence Prevention Month, and instituted a program in which fugitives who are at large for domestic violence cases were targeted, they were arrested, and that cycle of violence was interrupted. Now, as a judge, it is my priority to make sure that in every domestic violence case, there is justice, that the defendant's rights are protected, but that the victim is heard. I bring that commitment to the 248th District Court, and we will continue to make sure that domestic violence cases are handled with priority that they deserve.
Please state a procedure or policy that you have or plan to introduce in your court, if elected, that you feel will result in greater effectiveness and/or efficiency in your court.
There are 2. The first is that as soon as I took the bench in the 248, we did implement and became one of those 5 pilot programs for the docket management system. That differentiated caseload management has been a new way of looking at docket management. It is solely for the purpose of efficiency and effectiveness of handling the cases, managing those tax dollars to the maximum of their use. We are committed in the 248 District Court to the efficiency of the process because it saves tax dollars. Secondly, I am one of 4 drug court judges. That means that there is a specialized docket where we send those repeat drug offenders, where we can interrupt that cycle of repeated incarceration and make sure that they are not coming back through our criminal justice system, costing us money.
Please give your opinion of the pros and cons as you see them of the present public defendant program versus the appointment of private attorneys to represent the indigent.
I use the private attorney system every single day to appoint those attorneys who have been qualified in our court system to represent indigent defendants. Every defendant deserves representation regardless of their ability to pay, and I make sure that that happens. The appointed private attorneys we are so fortunate here in Harris County to have exceptional private attorneys who are representing those defendants. The public defender system is new since I came back to the courthouse, and so I have enjoyed using it. I think it is effective. I think it is an excellent office, and I use it in those cases in which the additional resources that that office can bring are warranted. Those larger cases that need that extra attention from the greater amount of tools and resources that the public defender's office has. I use both systems. I think they're both excellent, and I enjoy working with those attorneys in my courtroom every day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next candidate is candidate Shauna Reagan, the 248th Criminal District Court. Please state your name and why you feel you're a good candidate for this court.
Good evening, and thank you for having us here. My name is Shauna Reagan, and I am the Democratic candidate for the 248th Criminal District Court. That is a felony court. It hears the most serious criminal cases in our county, and I have my entire experience, my entire career has been devoted to the trying of felony cases, both at the trial and appellate level. This November, I will have been licensed 25 years, which seems amazing to me. From the time that I was still in law school, I interned at the Harris County District Attorney's Office and went on from there to become a private defense lawyer up until 2008 when I was elected judge of the 176th Criminal District Court. I served 4 years on that court. During that time, we were consistently among the top criminal courts as far as number of cases tried. And to this date, to the best of my knowledge, not a single trial verdict or pretrial ruling has been reversed.
Domestic violence is currently very much in the news. If elected, how would you handle such cases in your court, and what tools do you have available to protect the injured party?
Yes, thank you. As most of the other criminal judges and candidates have said tonight, the cases, once they get to the felony level, are the more serious cases, and the tools that are available were the same ones that I had before. Generally, the judge is most involved when the case is still pending, has not gone to trial. At that time, it's up to the judge to be sure that the conditions of bond are imposed that will keep both the complainant or the victim safe, and while respecting the presumption of innocence of the accused. This generally involves the no-contact orders to the extent that often even against the wishes of the complaining witness. And if children are involved, this involves arranging the supervised visitation of the children if it is desired, or sometimes when appropriate, no contact whatsoever. And I would anticipate just continuing to do those things.
Please state a procedure or policy that you have or plan to introduce in your court, if elected, that you feel has or will result in greater effectiveness and/or efficiency in your court.
When I was elected judge of the 176th District Court in 2008, I inherited a trial docket with over 230 pending jury trials and almost 1,000 pending cases. By the time I left at the end of 2012, that number had been reduced to 41 pending jury trials with a little over 700 pending cases. I did this by sort of a hybrid implementation of the case management system that has now been implemented by 5 trial courts. At the time, I had to modify it because I was the only court doing it, but it is important that every setting count and that the parties are made accountable to actually working on the cases every time that they come to court. It's also important, it's been my experience that once the jury trial docket is controlled and the cases go down, then that allows the rest of the docket to fall into line. Both sides of every criminal case have a right to have their matters heard in a very timely manner, and I remain committed to that.
Please give your opinion of the pros and cons, as you see them, of the present public defendant program versus the appointment of private attorneys to represent the indigent.
Yes, I was a very early proponent of the Public Defender's Office, which made me extremely unpopular among my fellow defense attorneys at the time. I was involved in the early 90s in creating the certification course and tests that are now required for every lawyer who wishes to represent the indigent accused in Harris County. I believe the Public Defender's Office has has its pros. Among them is they are more independent of the judges. They do not have to rely on currying the judge's favor in order to get appointments or in the resolution of cases. They also, as has been said by many other people tonight, have a great deal more resources available to them than sometimes individual appointed attorneys do. Having been a defense lawyer for over 20 years, I was perhaps hyper aware of when lawyers were not representing their clients. Much like a bar exam, you can take a test, but you can't always put legs on the law and walk it into the courtroom, and I believe that we need to continue to diligently supervise those independent lawyers to make sure they're accurately doing their job.
Thank you. Candidate Jules Johnson, the 267th Criminal District Court.
Good evening.
Please state your name and why you feel you're a good candidate for this court.
My name is Jules Johnson, and I'm a candidate for the 262nd Criminal District Court here in Harris County. I'm a native Houstonian. I grew up here. I've gone to school here, both college and law school, attending Thurgood Marshall School of Law at Texas Southern University. When I graduated from law school, I went to work at the district attorney's office and then went on into private practice. When the Harris County Public Defender's Office did open up, I was part of the inaugural group of trial attorneys to accept that position to help represent the indigent persons here in Harris County. I feel that I have the unique experience of having practiced law on both sides of the criminal defense, being both in the prosecutor's office and in the district attorney's office. The public defender's office, which allows for the unique ability for me to be able to see all sides of the equation and be able to handle not only the victim issues that may come up with case, but also deal and handle with some of the collateral consequences that defendants face in the cases.
Domestic violence is currently very much in the news. If elected, how would you handle such cases in your court, and what tools do you have available to protect the injured party?
Again, I believe that domestic violence is not only systemic, but I believe it's an epidemic. And I believe that part of that comes because the root of the problem is never being addressed. I believe that when these cases come through your court, in order to protect persons that are the victims of these cases, there needs to be a closer monitor on the people that are accused. You can do that without violating any of their rights to their case. For example, you can have special dockets just handling domestic violence cases where those people come to court more often, or they have different reporting criteria. They check in with the pretrial services department more frequently. They do have ankle monitoring. I believe that there are different things that can be done to not only protect their rights, but to also protect the victims and the citizens of Harris County.
Please state a procedure or policy that you have or plan to introduce in your court, if elected, that you feel has or will result in greater effectiveness and or efficiency in the court.
I have the privilege to be running for the 262nd Criminal Court, which is one of the most efficient courts in Harris County right now. I do believe that there are systems that can be put in place to make things easier on everyone involved. I do believe that you can institute things like afternoon dockets specifically for the purpose of allowing people to plead their cases. Maybe something has been worked out, but sometimes there are people that are accused of criminal offenses that have jobs. And if you schedule a time known and certain for them to come in and plead their case, they may spend less time in the courtroom and away from their job. And as we know, that sometimes when people have jobs, sometimes that will present the recidivism and prevent them from coming back into the system.
Please give your opinion of the pros and cons as you see them of the present public defendant program versus the appointment of private attorneys to represent the indigent.
Again, being a member of the Public Defender's Office, I see that there is a great value in having a Public Defender's Office here in Harris County. We are a large county with a number of people, and unfortunately we do have a number of indigent people who are charged with criminal offenses. We also have a very large and very strong defense bar in Harris County. I believe that when using the Public Defender's Office along with the private defense bar, we are giving the indigent people in Harris County some very good representation. The Harris County Public Defender's Office, through Its public defender, Alex Bunnan, believes in what's known as holistic defense. What we try to do is encompass the entire person, deal with some of the collateral consequences that people face when they're charged with criminal offenses, and we assist the private bar in their research and disposing of cases. I think that both systems work together very well, and I would continue to use them in conjunction.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next candidate, Judge Denise Bradley, the 262nd Criminal District Court. Please state your name and why you feel you're a good candidate for this court.
My name is Denise Bradley. I am currently the judge of the 262nd Criminal District Court. I left a job that I loved as a prosecutor. I was a career prosecutor for 25 years. I've had the benefit of walking into the Harris County Criminal Justice Center for over 25 years, almost 30 years now. My service to Harris County as a prosecutor well prepared me for my duties on the bench. I can tell you that as a prosecutor, I tried all types of felony cases, including 12 death penalty cases. When I left the DA's office, I was the head of the Capital Litigation Division, handling the most complex prosecutions that we handle in our criminal justice system. So I was well prepared to handle the legal issues that come up in court every day as judge of the 262nd District Court.
Domestic violence is currently very much in the news. If elected, how would you handle such cases in your court, and what tools do you have available to protect the injured party?
I recognize, currently as the judge of the 262nd, I recognize the tragic consequences of domestic violence cases. And people, as a prosecutor, I handled 2 cases where a woman was killed at the hands of her spouse. One was killed in the presence of her daughter. The other was killed at work. So I take domestic violence cases very seriously. I do implement multiple systems in dealing with people who are out on bond and accused of domestic violence. I currently do use a GPS monitor that includes an exclusion zone so that I know where a perpetrator is at all times if they're out on bond. I also recognize that there are things that we need to do in terms of preventing spousal abuse and domestic violence. We have a batter intervention prevention program and also lethality assessment tools that we're currently using to address people who are convicted of domestic violence in an attempt to rehabilitate those individuals.
Please state a procedure or policy that you have or plan to introduce in your court, if elected, that you feel has or will result in greater effectiveness and/or efficiency in your court.
I currently do preside over one of the most, I believe, efficient courts in Harris County. I maintain the lowest docket in Harris County, and I do that by working hard every single day. We tried more cases in my court than any other court last year. So I think it's important that a judge not only know what they're doing in terms of being qualified, but also do the work that's required. So I'm happy to say that in the 262nd District Court, justice is efficient. It is, I believe that justice delayed is justice denied. So I'm happy that the victims of criminal offenses get their day in court in a timely manner. I'm also happy to say that defendants who are accused of offenses get their day in court in a timely manner. So I believe that we currently are very effective or efficient. I also preside over some very effective programs. I currently preside over the STAR Drug Court program that is a therapeutic court. I serve on the State Therapeutic Specialty Court Advisory Council that is working at dealing with rehabilitation and actually preventing people from coming back into the system by treating them and dealing with barriers to success and enabling those people to be rehabilitated, dealing with drug issues, homelessness, and joblessness, which I believe are the things that bring people back into our criminal justice system.
Please give your opinion of the pros and cons as you see them of the present public defendant program versus appointment of private attorneys to represent the indigent.
I use contract attorneys on a daily basis in the 262nd District Court because I believe that people who are accused of crimes should be represented at every stage of the process. So those attorneys are certified to practice criminal law. They also are available to defendants on a regular basis. I combine that with appointed attorneys for individual cases. Those attorneys handle, I use attorneys both from the Public Defender's Office and private attorneys who handle the cases individually. I can tell you that I believe both of them are very effective because the lawyers that I use are certified by our Fair Defense Act. They are certainly the highest quality attorneys that we have in Harris County, and I'm proud of the work that they do in my court. I am proud of the investigations that they complete and the way that they defend people in trial. I can tell you that people who come before me and are charged with serious criminal offenses are very, very well represented in the 262nd District Court.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next candidate is candidate Herb Ritchie, the 263rd Criminal District Court. Please state your name and why you feel you're a good candidate for this court.
My name is Herb Ritchie, and I am the nominee of the Democratic Party for the 263rd Criminal District Court. I was previously a judge of the 337th Criminal District Court here in Harris County, and I served for 4 years. I'm an honor graduate of the University of Texas at Austin. I have a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, a doctor of jurisprudence. I taught classics at the University of Texas and also at Baylor University. After obtaining the master's degree, I went to law school and graduated with honors there. I took the bar examination and luckily made the third highest grade in the state of Texas. I'm Phi Beta Kappa honorary Scholastic Achievement Society, Eta Sigma Phi honorary achievement for classics, and Phi Delta Phi honorary achievement for the law school. I have been a judge before, and I'm very qualified, and it'll require no on-the-job training if you elect me as judge of your 263rd Criminal District Court.
Domestic violence is currently very much in the news. If elected, how would you handle such cases in your court, and what tools do you have available to protect the injured party?
I would continue to use the tools that I used previously as judge of the 337th Criminal District Court. For those who have not made bond, I would hear probable cause from the district attorney, and I would listen to the allegations, and depending on those allegations, on how serious and or how violent the alleged defendant was, I would set a bond accordingly. The more violent, a higher bond. I also would issue emergency protective orders and order no contact in the appropriate cases. I wouldn't let the defendant go within so many feet of the home or place of employment, and also would set conditions of bond, no contact. I stood between the bully and the victim.
Please state a procedure or policy that you have or plan to introduce in your court, if elected, that you feel has or will result in greater effectiveness and or efficiency in your court.
One of the policies that I had and that I would continue as judge of the 263rd Criminal District Court, it saves time, and I think it's also effective in that it protects the public. For DWI third offenders, these are people who have had a DWI not once, not twice, but this is their third time when they're coming to felony court. For these people, 3 strikes and they're out. No driving, no restricted licenses, no occupational license. You're going to have to get to work on your own if you're able to make probation. As a condition of their probation, no driving. For people that would evade arrest and put the public and the police officers at danger, I would normally, if they posed a lot of risk and ignored traffic signals, give a higher bond for those folks. Also, I'm in favor of afternoon dockets, and an attorney's requesting their motions can be heard in the afternoon.
Please give your opinion of the pros and cons, as you see them, of the present public defendant program versus the appointment of private attorneys to represent the indigent.
The public defender program, I think, is an excellent program. There's some very, very good attorneys in the public defender's office. I appointed public defenders generally as much as I possibly could until they couldn't take any more cases. One of the reasons I liked doing that is that it leveled the playing field between the defense of the indigent and the prosecution. The Public Defender's Office has investigators, and they have resources that are available that some attorneys might not have. On the other hand, for capital cases, for very complex cases, I would tend to appoint knowledgeable, experienced, and competent attorneys. I myself have been licensed over 40 years, and I know most of the competent, knowledgeable attorneys, and I would appoint those people to give diligent and effective representation to the indigent defendants in Harris County.
Thank you. At this time, this concludes our judicial forum. I did forget one of our panel members earlier, and I apologize. Kevin Melton with Senior Plans, Medicare Plan Consultant. He's been our timekeeper all night, so I'd be remiss if I missed him, and I apologize for that. I'd like to thank all of the panel members for coming out tonight, as well as the candidates. Thank you all, and have a great night.